Imagine waking up one morning to the roar of heavy machinery, only to rush outside and watch helplessly as bulldozers tear down the only bridge connecting your family's century-old ranch to the outside world. That bridge wasn't just wood and stone. It was a lifeline, built by your great-grandfather's hands, carrying generations of cattle, supplies, and memories across a gentle creek, and the people ordering its destruction. Your new neighbors in a gleaming upscale subdivision, led by a power-hungry HOA president who decided it was an unsightly relic, spoiling their perfect view. My name is Harlan Whitaker, and for over 80 years, my family has ranched these rolling hills in eastern Colorado. Our land stretches back to the late 1800s, when homesteaders first tamed this wild country. The creek running through it, Meadow Brook, has always been there, meandering lazily, feeding our pastures, and crossed by that sturdy old timber bridge my ancestors erected in 1923. It stood strong through floods, blizzards, and droughts. I never thought it'd fall to a bunch of city transplants in manicured lawns and matching mailboxes. It all started about 5 years ago when developers bought the parcel adjacent to our southern boundary. They carved out Meadow Ridge Estates, a gated community of sprawling McMansions with 3-car garages, artificial ponds, and views of the Rockies. Fine by me. Live and let live. But then came Victoria Langford, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. She moved in with her investment banker husband and immediately took over the board. Victoria was the type who measured grass height with a ruler and sent certified letters over holiday decorations left up a day too long. One spring morning in 2023, I got a knock on my door. There stood Victoria, flanked by 2 board members, holding a stack of papers. "Mr. Whitaker," she said with that fake sweet smile, "we voted to remove the eyesore on our property line. That dilapidated bridge is a safety hazard and violates our aesthetic standards." I explained calmly at first that the bridge was entirely on my land, built long before their development existed, and served as my primary access for the lower pastures. She didn't care. They claimed a survey showed part of the bridge footing encroached on a common area easement they'd quietly acquired. Before I could even hire a lawyer to fight it, their contractors showed up with permits from the county, greased no doubt by donations from Meadow Ridge residents. I watched from my porch as they chainsawed the beams and hauled away the debris. Overnight, my ranch was split. The house and barns on one side, hundreds of acres of grazing land on the other. To get my cattle across now meant a 10-mile detour on public roads, costing me time, fuel, and wear on my trucks. I was furious, but I'm not one to lash out recklessly. At 78 years old, I've learned patience is a sharper tool than anger. I called my old friend Tom Riley, a land use attorney who'd helped my father decades ago. Over coffee on my kitchen table, we pored over deeds, surveys, and historical records. That's when we struck gold. Back in the 1890s, when the railroad pushed through these parts, the federal government granted perpetual rights-of-way and water protections along Meadow Brook. Old maps showed the creek's natural channel, a historic path that had been subtly altered in the 1950s when upstream farmers diverted it for irrigation, restoring it to that original 1890s course, perfectly legal under environmental reclamation laws, especially since it would benefit wetlands and native fish species. And guess whose fancy subdivision sat smack in the middle of that forgotten floodplain? The new channel would skirt right around Meadow Ridge Estates, encircling their 150 homes like a natural barrier. No flooding their basements, just redirecting the flow to hug their borders, turning their exclusive enclave into a peninsula accessible only by one narrow road. A moat, in essence, without a single drop on their lawns. Victoria caught wind of my plans when I filed permits with the Army Corps of Engineers and the State Water Board. She stormed over again, this time red-faced. "You can't do this. You'll ruin our property values." I just smiled and said, "Ma'am, I'm just restoring a historic waterway. It's good for the environment." She fought tooth and nail. They hired their own lawyers, filed injunctions, even tried to get the bridge demolition declared a precedent for blocking my project. But the facts were ironclad. My family owned the riparian rights upstream, and the restoration qualified for federal grants promoting habitat recovery. Environmental groups jumped on board, literally. A team of biologists surveyed the area, documenting rare plants and birds that would thrive with the change. Victoria escalated. Anonymous complaints flooded the county about my overgrazed fields. Never mind, we'd been sustainable ranchers for generations. She tried to have inspectors cite me for non-existent violations. One low blow. Digging up old public records about my late wife's hospital stays from years ago, hinting in HOA newsletters that I was financially unstable and might sell out. My Ellen had passed from cancer a decade earlier. Bringing her into this crossed a line I didn't know I had, but every attack just strengthened my resolve. I partnered with an eco-engineering firm, funded partly by those grants. Heavy equipment arrived, excavators, bulldozers of my own. We worked methodically, digging new channels lined with native grasses and rocks to prevent erosion. The water responded eagerly, as if remembering its old path. Meadow Brook began to shift, inch by inch, day by day. By late summer, the transformation was complete. The creek now flowed in a graceful loop around Meadow Ridge, wide enough to deter casual crossing but shallow in most spots. Their once convenient back gates opened onto water. Kids couldn't roam freely anymore. Delivery trucks grumbled about the longer route. Property listings started popping up with phrases like unique waterfront access to spin it positively, but values dipped as buyers balked at the isolation. Victoria's crowning blunder came one frantic night. Her husband, desperate to fix things, snuck out with a couple of buddies and cases of explosives, planning to blast a breach in the new banks and force the water back. Sheriff's deputies caught them red-handed, thanks to trail cams I'd installed for wildlife monitoring. Charges of attempted ecological sabotage and illegal explosives made headlines. He plea bargained to probation, but the scandal tarnished Victoria's reign. The HOA board crumbled under lawsuits from residents furious about plummeting values and the embarrassment. Victoria resigned in disgrace, moving away shortly after. Meadow Ridge? They installed a pricey pontoon ferry for emergencies and lobbied for a new access road, on their dime. As for me, the restoration earned awards from conservation societies. Fish populations boomed, birds returned in flocks, and my pastures greened up better than ever. Cattle crossed the creek on new fords I built higher up, safe from any meddling. These days, when I ride out at sunset, I pause where the old bridge used to stand. The water sparkles below, winding peacefully around those distant rooftops like a silver ribbon. Sometimes I tip my hat toward Meadow Ridge and chuckle. They wanted to erase a piece of history to suit their vision. Instead, they got a front row seat to nature reclaiming its own, and learned the hard way that some things, like old ranchers and ancient waterways, don't bend to suburban whims. If there's a lesson here, it's this: mess with a man's heritage, and you might just find yourself on an island of your own making. Meadow Brook flows on just as it should. And my ranch is whole again, bridge or no bridge.